Hello, my YouTube friends. And today I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to go live and I'm going to talk about something. Um, I was talking with a friend on the community section of my channel, in the comment section. I did a reaction video to a band I never heard of before last week from Brazil. They were called Vitalism, and they were amazing. They had their own. I mean, I can always hear the influences. I can listen to a band and say, "Oh, these guys were into that." That's a good name for a band, eh? Dud, 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 dud. But I was listening to it, and I was just the band blew me away. They were really good. It looked like they were signed to a label. They had distribution, and they had an amazing video. The production on the video was amazing. They're playing on this cliff out by the sea. They're from Brazil, and I really liked the band, and I wanted to learn more about them. And a fellow, I don't want to mispronounce his name, but he said in the comments, he said, "I love this band and they're so good, and too bad they're not together anymore." And we kind of got into a little bit of a conversation, and it was kind of ironic because I had already started filming some videos to discuss why most bands fail. There's a lot of reasons for that, and it's hard to put it all into one video, and I'm going to do a series on it. It was hard to talk about, though, because there was so much, and I kind of messed up the video. I did a long shoot on it, and it just wasn't cohesive. It wasn't making sense. So I kind of worked on refining it. And part of this whole thing is when we see these famous bands, or someone quits in the middle of a tour, or the band's like a huge band and someone quits, when we're not kind of privy to what goes on in a lot of bands, it doesn't make any sense to us. We watch and like for example, when Jason Newsted quit Metallica in 2001 or 2002, whenever it was, for a lot of people it'd be like, dude, like you're in one of the biggest bands of the world. Like what, well, if you watch the movie Some Kind of Monster that came out around 2003 or 2004, I think, Jason, they talk about it and there's a lot of tension between them, and he kind of gave his reasons. And at that time, uh, I know very more recently, the past couple of years, Metallica did a big interview and they kind of talked about that. Now they said, looking back, yeah, we get why he left. We had a certain mindset, and whether it was right or wrong, we don't know. But it just wasn't working for him after a while, despite the money and the fame and everything. And he had to do what he had to do. But I wanted to talk about this. I don't want to say it's a fun topic, but for those of you that have never been in the music industry, or they don't really know what goes on behind the scenes, it's kind of interesting to talk about. A good friend of the channel, Solitary Adventurer, who has been just a godsend to this channel. He's kind of educating me, and he's become a good friend, and I really like to get his opinion on things. When we have done our Prince discussions, that many are posted here on the channel, for me, I try and look into things more from that professional musician perspective. Like, what happened here? What was the dynamics? Like, what? So we've also had a lot of really fascinating conversations off camera. So, but I kind of wanted to get into this a little bit and just have a fun conversation. And I'm going to post this. I'd like to do more in-depth videos on this, but just to kind of inform you guys, just kind of talk to you guys a little bit about what goes on. And it's not just international big bands, it's local, regional bands, things that happen. I have my notes here. There's a lot to talk about, and we'll see what happens here. And there's my man I was just talking about in the Solitary Adventure, right? So usually when bands start, we have a couple of case scenarios. Okay, so can you guys see this? Look at that. Do I have a glare on it? So for a lot of my career, my good friend from Indonesia, hello, good to see you. I'll be doing a video very soon on Elite Bata. What happens with a lot of bands when they start, okay, for me, I've had a lot of good luck playing for professional bands. They say, hey, you're a good guitar player, we need you. We have this run of gigs. We're going to pay you this much. You know, the last professional band I worked for, it was a very good gig. The guys were very professional. They had really good paying gigs, and you know, I worked for them. I enjoyed it. You know, like in any band, we're going to get into this. There's different personalities, and as you get more experience in bands, you kind of can look at situations and go, oh, this person has this personality. This person has this personality. And then you learn how to work around the different personalities. So, but if we look at a quick progression of how a lot of bands work, okay? So as I just talked about, we have established bands. Right? You're playing professionally. You either audition for or get in touch with an established band. Boom. Okay. Now, the next thing is for not established bands. Okay, for a lot of people, they might be kind of newer to their instrument. They might be newer to playing in bands. Maybe you're a teenager, kind of just starting out, making your way. There's a couple of different things. I'm going to use teenagers, and sometimes there's guys, grown adults, who are 9-to-5ers, and then, you know, on the weekend they just like to play in a band. But then this is the next progression. The next progression usually is the band starts to kind of be a bit more cohesive, and then people are kind of like, hey, so why don't we try booking a gig? And then if we book a gig, we can make some cash and make a bit of money. This is where a lot of the problem lies. Okay, I'm going to get to my main point, but what is a business? Now your band, and why do most people start bands? For fun. See that? F-U-N. Fun. Okay, but here's the problem. Fun, but now it's become a business. A business is a transaction of a good or a service in exchange for payment. So now the dynamics of your band are going to change, and a lot of people don't get that. They don't understand, well, now you want money, so now you've become a business. A lot of musicians don't understand that. They just think, well, we just get up and we play, and it's like, no, you have to look at it now as a business. So one of the things that I always tell people is to go back to what is called the original band agreement. If you do this, when things start to go awry or people aren't keeping agreements or it feels like the band's falling apart, this will be a boon to you. Okay, guys, what was the original band agreement when we started this band? And when we made new agreements, did we collectively agree, if I had my way, I had like the band agreement written out and everyone signs it. You know, things changed. Things change in life. But this is where, for volume 1, we get into personalities. Okay. So when you're in bands, there's a lot of different personalities. Now, there's probably more than what I've written down, but I kind of thought through some of my history in bands, and I came up with a shorter list. You guys might get a kick out of this, but just imagine this. And the thing is, too, is I want you guys to remember, as a band, it's very much like a relationship. Okay, so imagine you go on Plenty of Fish and you go out with someone for one date. Could you imagine committing to that person? It's kind of like when you're in a band. I've been in situations like that. I would audition, people like, dude, you're a smoking guitar player. We want you in. And you're kind of like, yeah. You know, I knowing what I know now, I'd be the type of just saying, well, let's just, you know, jam a little more for a while. But usually it's not like that. If you're good, there's a lot of pressure on you to join and commit. And really, you got to take your time a little more. But anyway, first type of personality. Okay. We've got our type A personality. What does that mean? Well, it means you're a leader. You like to get things done. You don't like the things just kind of be up in the air. You're like, okay, let's go. Let's do this. Let's, you know, be professional. Let's, you know, you can look through a lot of bands. When you look through a lot of bands, usually it's the people that come out and they become the leaders, because sometimes someone has to. Another thing I'm going to say too with a business band, I don't want to get this video too all over the place because there's a lot to talk about. So when it comes down to a business, when your band agrees we're going to be a business, you have what is called two options. You can be a democracy, or you can be a dictatorship. Democracy is when everyone contributes supposedly equally, but it's a very flawed system, because usually what happens is not everyone keeps their agreements. Usually it's kind of like when you do a group project in high school. One person has to do more of the work to get things done. Usually one person shoulders more of the expenses. I'm going to have videos about that. The dictatorship, that is where someone says, hey, I'm going to run the ship. I own the PA system. I do all the bookings. I take on all the expenses. I take more of a cut. And that usually leads to problems because, the other people who don't do near as much work, they just show up and get paid. They end up usually complaining about not making the same money, which is just crazy. But believe me, it happens. Okay. So anyway, we have got the type A personality. Type A personality is the person that likes to kind of get things done. They don't like to leave things up in the air for too long. So what personality type do you think I am when I played in bands? I was a type A. I like to think that I was fair, patient. I'm a flawed human being, though, guys. My communication skills when I was younger, was not what it is now. I can look back at some of the band situations I was in when I was younger. I wish I kind of tried to communicate a little bit more, but obviously I had a lot of frustration built up to that point. But still, things are what they are. So a lot of other types of personalities will look at a type A and say, okay, well, he's pushy and he's intense and he makes things not fun. But when you're in a business and things need to get done, the next type of personality is what I like to call an even keel. Okay. So an even keel personality is someone that's kind of straight and narrow down the road. They get along with everybody for the most part. They can get along with the type A. They can get along with the other personalities. They want to be in the band. They want to gig. They want to have fun. They're fairly reliable. Okay. Is the band their be all end all? Not usually. But now looking at it from an older perspective, when you're younger, usually it's the band, the be all end all. But there's an even keel personality. And I can think of a number of people who were like that in my past, who were just, decent personalities. They were kind of easy to get along with. They got along with everyone, even the type A personalities and the other personalities. Okay. Then, of course, we have our stoner, or drunk. Now, I don't mean to be offensive when I talk about that, but there is a portion of musicians out there. Of course, they want to make money. And I'm going to get into this personality a little bit more. But they just want to go have a good time, chill out, smoke some weed, drink some alcohol, and just chill out. It's kind of like their downtime, but they don't understand sometimes, well, it's your downtime, but you want to make money at this. So, hey. Now, we're going to start getting into some more personality types here. Okay. So we've talked about type A personality, even keel. Okay. Stoner and the drunk. Okay. Now, some of the other personalities. Okay. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Okay. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So what is that? What does that mean? So 1 foot in, 1 foot out is a kind of personality type where they're in the band, but they're kind of not. They're kind of like, well, let's just kind of see how it goes, which can be okay, but the problem is they're not really giving you the effort. There's a lot of personalities out there. I'm going to give you guys an example. I remember a guy, very talented musician, and he played an original band. And I remember 20 years ago talking to him and him saying, this original band's thing's great, but we're not making any money. We're paying money on recording, and I've got kids on the way. I wish I could get like a good cover gig because I'd like to make some money. And Derek's Pipes and Cigars, hey buddy, how are you doing? So a number of years later, I presented to him a really good cover band opportunity. Okay, it had big production, big sound. I had a lot of potential contacts for big gigs. Like this wasn't just playing in bars. This was like doing big shows at more of the arenas in each of the towns and making some good money type thing. And he was a very talented guy, and we talked about it, and he committed to it, but he didn't really commit to it because he was like, the music was a little bit more complicated. He didn't really want to put the effort into learning. And I remember, like he canceled a lot of rehearsals last minute. And I don't know. I think we got to a point, I kind of forget, he might kind of remember things a little bit differently. I think we just parted ways. I think I just said, look, man, like I kind of need someone here who's going to really work and do this. There's always a lot of warning signs, guys. When you do, a jam or rehearsal and someone shows up 2 hours late to miss the setup time so they don't have to put in the work, that's always a warning sign when you're playing in a band. Anytime I've ever had to deal with people like that, it's like, yeah, they're just not people you want to work with. So, but anyway, the foot in, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, they're kind of in the band, but they're not. They want to kind of see how it goes, but they don't really want to put any work into it. I would encourage you to avoid personality types like that if you want to get things done. But then we have our stereotypical musician. Stereotypical musician. Have you ever heard the joke? What do you call a musician when his girlfriend kicks him out? Homeless. So the stereotypical musician, and I mean that with a lot of respect for musicians, but the stereotypical musician is a musician who just doesn't have their act together. Their life's a disaster. And they don't really tell you about this in the beginning. Kind of remember, whether you're dating or you're in a band, people don't kind of tell you their faults. They like to put their best foot forward. I remember joking about, can you imagine going to a dating site? Okay, so there's like, plenty of fish. There's Tinder, Bumble, all those sites. Imagine if it was like a pure honesty site where people were like, in their profile, they wrote, hey, I'm an alcoholic. I used to, I really don't like to work. Don't expect me to go to dinner with you or do anything ever. I just want to sit on the couch and watch TV. You know what I mean? Like if can you imagine if people were just that upfront and honest right from the beginning? But people don't do that. It takes time. It's like in a relationship, I'm sure some of you have experienced that. You're in a relationship in the beginning, everything's wonderful. The person's so nice, but after a few months, people start to change, and you're kind of sitting there scratching your head going, wow, I kind of thought, gee. Or if they have hidden agendas, they come out. But anyway, I regress. So that's what a stereotypical musician, just someone who just doesn't have their act together. Okay. The difference between the stereotypical musician and the stoner or the drunk, it's kind of not quite the same thing, although there might be seeing the same thing, the stoner or the drunk. A lot of them, they have, a weekly job, and they just kind of look at it, no matter what the band agreement is on the weekend, like I have a job, I pay my bills, I just want to have fun and chill out. Okay. Where the stereotypical musician, their life is a disaster. It's like, I played in a band with a guy one time, and he was a real kind of hippie type, kind of amicable in his own way. He was not reliable, but he was kind of like, he used to say to me, whenever I need something in life, God will provide it for me. And I remember one day looking at him saying, well, I must be God because, I've lent you money and I give you drives to band functions all the time. Like, and I remember years later playing at a big benefit with the band I was in, and he had a side gig as a magician. Like, he was a nice guy. He was good with people. He was good with his magic tricks. And I remember I playing this big function. I don't know if it was for, I think it's for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And we did it for free. We would do one volunteer free gig a year for a cause, for something like that, Make-A-Wish or whatever. And I remember the promoter saying, we booked him a magician, we paid him, whatever it was good money, and he just didn't show up. And I said, was his name Jake? And they're like, yeah. I said, okay. That was just his personality. But usually when you're playing in a band and you play with that type of personality, it can lead to a lot of problems if you want to be professional and to do well. The next one, we're going to call the next one the resistor. And you could call them the procrastinator, but kind of have to be careful. Not necessarily, but usually the resistor has some procrastination issues. So I have two examples of the resistor. So the resistor, often they're talented, but they like to be difficult, not for the better purpose of the band, but they like to do it because the type A personality and the resistor do not get along well. Eventually, they're going to be bumping heads. The type A personality likes kind of saying, okay, when can we get this done? Let's get things done. Let's do this. Let's do that. Where the resistor likes to step back and say, and they like to kind of poke the type A in the chest just to be difficult. They like to be difficult just for the sake of being difficult, to say, hey, you're not getting your way. So I'm going to give you guys a couple examples of the resistor / procrastinator. So what I'm getting to with this, guys, is when you see a band kind of not work out or why a band will fail, the biggest reason is because the battle of the personalities, okay? It's just very hard to become a cohesive unit with all the different personality types. They either, have to work collectively together and all be on board, or all at least get along well together, and it's a challenge. So many years ago, I played in a band. I'm going to say this is 2001. It was the year 2001. And I played in a band with this fellow. He was a bass player and he was a singer and very talented guy. I actually, I have not played live, and I have not played live in a long time. And I kind of looked on one of those band sites, like to see what's out there. I don't see myself ever playing live again. And I just don't want to deal with the personalities and go through this again. But I saw him, and he had a number of bands since, and they never worked out. And I know why. It's because of his personality. He had a very difficult personality. But anyway, I got together with these guys. I think it was the end of 2000. I had my band agreement. I said, look, this is what I'm looking to do. I'd like to get out and gig. Now, he had a really cushy day job, but he was very passionate about his music. And, but I felt we had an agreement, right? And the thing is, we kind of got into this thing. It's like a relationship. People just take people for granted. They get comfortable. And I kind of think he saw it, that we were just going to be this long-term, and he didn't understand on my end. Like I was on a time clock. Not that I was going to have kids, but I could feel my biological clock ticking, like, it's like, dude, like, I'm not going to be with you forever if it's not going to be what I wanted it to be. And we just got into, just weird dynamics. I remember he was going to do the website, and 9 months in, the website still wasn't done. I remember he and I butted heads over that. And it just got to a point where it just became very toxic. I remember trying to call him a few times and just say, look, like, we're having some problems here. And he wouldn't pick up the phone. And it was kind of that thing. It's like, then I go to the next band rehearsal and the expectation was to just kind of nothing happen. Let's just go on. I don't like that. I like to talk and figure out what the problem is. And anyway, it just got to this point. I remember sending him like an honest email. You try and talk in person, guys. It really is the better way to do it. And he just said, you're being ridiculous. So anyway, at the end of the year, I said, guys, we have a personality, a chemistry problem, and it's time for me to move on. And it was a cool band, man. And the drummer became a very good friend of mine. It was just too bad. There's a lot of potential there. We could have done a lot of good things, but I left. They brought in another lead guitar player, and within a couple of weeks, they just packed it in and folded it. That's another thing with bands, guys. Like, I'm going to tell you the story of the next resistor. So he's my first example. My next example is I had a 3-piece classic country rock band that I did most of the bookings, the work for. I owned most of the PA system. And I had a lot of contacts from a really good, really popular band I played in beforehand. And I got together with this bass player. He was a good-looking older guy. He could sing. He had a certain range he was good at. When we got together, I just said, look, it's going to be a busy band. I remember we all got together for a dinner beforehand. And before the band started, and I said, look, like, I took out a big loan to get a whole bunch of equipment and to do a bunch of things. And I was absorbing a lot of the extra costs. And I remember saying, I need three things. We're all on time for the load in. We're a three-piece band. We got a PA system. It's not fair for two people to, that old showing up late trick to not have to, always be careful of that, guys. Big warning sign. And then I said, well-groomed, look professional. We're going to be playing at weddings and, private parties. And, one of the things, guys, when you see those music stands and people have like cheat sheets in front of them, and it's in front of them when they're playing live, it looks really bad. Unless you're a jazz musician or a classical musician, because the music is so complex, it's kind of allowed. But if you're playing in like a country band or something, it just looks really bad. It looks really unprofessional. I've often said on this channel, if you go out and check out like a local band, if I go out and do that, and if I see the singer or whoever has a big cheat sheet, I'd be like, he just didn't want to put the work in. He just didn't. He started to become more late as the gigs went on. And, my frustration had hit a point after about a year. I started kind of cutting back the gigs. And then, Mark, how's it going, buddy? I remember trying to talk to the drummer, and I just said, I want to, if I could go back now, I wish I just I put a lot of work into that band, and it became a good business. I wish I just, kind of said, guys, it's not working out. And I got two new people to come in. But at that time, I just had my fill of it. And I remember towards the end, we were playing at an arena. It was a big wedding reception. And I remember at the end of the night, he was packing up my $2,000 mixing board into one of my road cases. And he said, Brian, I don't think you should take any extra money. I was taking like an extra $20. He said, I don't think you should take any extra money. We're a three-piece band. And he was always difficult just to be difficult. It wasn't for the betterment of the business. Some people just don't get business. And I remember after that, I remember wanting to just beat him into oblivion. And I remember being so mad. I don't think I slept for about 3 days, but I talked to the drummer. I just said, hey, man, I'm going to be fair. I've tried talking to you about my problems for a long time. And I gave my notice, but I was honorable. I filled in for probably about a month of gigs. And after I left, I took all my investment, everything I owned, most of the equipment. I had all the booking contacts. After I left, they played 2 gigs. One gig at a private venue that they knew me, and they contacted me after and said, you weren't there. It was really bad. Why didn't you tell us? I said, I had no idea that and number 2, they played at a really crappy gig that I never would have. And then they folded. We were a viable business. and the bass player who caused all the problems, he had a very menial day job. Nothing, a job's a job, man. I don't look down on people for their job, but he made more money really playing with me on weekends. But the funny thing is, in a lot of bands, people never come back and say, hey, man, we had a good thing there. I'm sorry. Hey, can we get together? Like, he never showed any appreciation for anything. He'd never say, hey, I appreciate this. You brought me into this well-paying gig. I'm making good money. Dinner's on me tonight, guys. Or come on up to my house for barbecue. Like, these silly little human things that we think are really, but, a lot of human nature, whether it's a relationship, a job, a band, when people have something really good, the tendency is to squash it, not nurture it and make it grow together. And I would scratch my head and go, like, I just don't understand. Like, where else would you get a gig that is paying you this well? In the region, we were a distant second. The band who was first was way ahead of every band, but we were a distant second, but we were the second most booked band in our region. And I remember just thinking, like, and he just never had the common sense just to call and say, hey, man, like, I'm sorry. I took things for granted, or I was being, I won't say what he was. I packed up and I moved on, and I had other gigs really quickly, and they did nothing after. What does that tell you? But he was another example of the resistor personality. Resistor personalities and type A's do not get along. If you're in a band and you don't have and you want things to go good and gigs to continue, you probably try and want to pick the type A personality over the resistor, because the resistor, it's going to be a chronic problem. They're very hard to deal with when it comes to business and long term. You guys are awesome. This is good though. This is people don't really realize this. People who aren't musicians. And weird call on my phone comes in, of course. The next type, the PW, or let's just say whipped. The PW. Okay, I won't say what the full term is, or we'll just say whipped. Okay, that you'll know them right away because they're the musician that brings their girlfriend to every band rehearsal, right? And if it's even worse, they kind of get involved in band business and band functions or whatever, and they start kind of causing problems and drama. I'll give you guys an example of that. For me, when I do a band rehearsal, it's for the band, girlfriends, boyfriends, partners. I'm going to give you a couple examples. Girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. They belong at shows, but they have to remember the band's playing, being professional. I've performed with live, and I remember, the woman I was with at the time. Women would hit on me after the set. I'm not saying I'm Brad Pitt, guys. Come on. I'm more fitted to Fight Club than Legends of the Fall. But, it wasn't easy. I'm being hit on, but, I'm polite about it, the way I handled it and everything, because, my business banner's behind the band, right? If I'm mean or whatever, I'm just really polite, saying, hey, I'm in a relationship, but, it's nice to meet you. Or, where was I going with that? But, they don't come to band rehearsals. They don't come when you're doing writing sessions. It's weird. It's just a weird dynamic. And I'm going to give you guys two examples of these situations. So probably back 2003, 2004, I played in a kind of a classic rock band. Had some strengths, the keyboard playing, definitely, the guitar playing. But there's a bass player singer in the band, and he was fairly talented. He wasn't great. He had some memory issues, remembering some certain parts and stuff, but he was just an overall likable guy. But he was married to a woman who, let's just say there was drama, and she kind of got involved in the band business. Again, I'm looking back at this almost 20 years later going, I'm much better with communication now than I was back then. But we would be emailing about band stuff, and sometimes you didn't really know if it was him or her emailing you back. And I think she really kind of got way too involved in things. And eventually, that became an ongoing problem, because then, I would hear things coming, I'd be working hard booking the band and doing stuff. And I took on, and he was always complaining about not having money, and, and so was she. But I would, we as a band would absorb extra band expenses and not include him in that, just to try and be nice and to help. And then it just wasn't going to be what I wanted. We had a couple of tryout gigs at some type A, A clubs, and the feedback from, the promoters would be like, okay, or the booking agents would be like, the singing isn't the best, the drummer isn't the best, the guitar and the keyboard was good, but we're not going to book you back. And I had a chance to go on to a bigger band, a much more popular band. I remember my first weekend with that band, I made $1,000, and that was, to me, I was just like, oh my God. And it was just a lot more professional. It had problems too, but it was a lot more professional in other ways. But anyway, so when I kind of gave my notice, I got quite the email from her, ripping me apart, and she was bad mouthing me to everyone. It was just one of those things, right? And sadly, though, the bass player, he, so many things to watch out for. When I started this channel, I know we've talked and done a lot of different things, but a lot of it is just to kind of also help pass on knowledge to other musicians, because I didn't have anyone teaching me about these things. So I'm going to give you guys another example of a girl I knew. I gave her guitar lessons when she was 15, maybe. She was, a beautiful girl. She had talent. Her family was behind her, helping her with music career. Years later, in her early 20s, she came to me for guitar lessons again. She said, I'm really frustrated with with musicians. And so I said, look, okay, I'll try and help you out. So I did a gig with her, and then we talked after. Her mom, I guess, was kind of her manager. And I said, look, the drummer, there's some problems there. And the bass player was a really good guy, and he is actually not a bad bass player, but there's some stuff going on. And she wanted to be on that next level. She had some recordings and whatever, she had singing potential. Like she had talent. I'm not going to get into all that. But I remember at a couple of the gigs, I remember one particular, she had a boyfriend at the time. And when he would get drinking, it became very tumultuous. And we were playing at this, nice upscale gig. And I remember I had put a lot of work into helping bring equipment. I was there hours earlier setting up. It was the dead of the summer. It was really hot. And, she kind of just showed up right before we started playing. And but her boyfriend at one point was watching the door. People pay so much to get in, and that was our money. That was our revenue. And he was really drinking. And I remember he let in probably 30 to 50 people for free. And I remember seeing that on stage while I was playing. For the most part, when there's been a couple involved, you can throw that into the PW thing. When there's been a couple involved, for me personally, it usually didn't have a good outcome. I could go into great lengths talking about that, but for me personally, that would be something for me. I'm not saying I wouldn't kind of show up and jam, maybe check it out, give it a little bit of a chance, but I probably would be wary going into a situation like that when there's a couple. Either if one of the couple is in management and one of them's a performer, or if two of them. Now, I'm sure there's been some out there that are okay. So again, guys, there's personalities. Okay, you could probably now go through some famous bands that fell apart or there were problems. The other thing is, I said, when you first meet someone, it's like playing in a band. Strawberry Mind, love you. How are you doing? When you're playing in a band, it's like, a relationship. In a band, I've been wined and dined. I've heard it all. But then once things get going and people start getting comfortable, their true colors, tendencies, addictions come out. I'm going to give you guys a couple more examples, but a big problem, alcohol. When I play live, I don't have a problem with whatever anyone has to do. If you have to drink, if you have to do maybe some other things that I won't mention, I was never into any of that stuff. I just like going out, just taking it on and playing. As long as you can perform and be professional, I don't care. But I remember this one gig I played with, and it was a local gig, and it was kind of music I enjoyed. It was a cover thing. And the singer, I really liked the guy. And I remember, him and I being at the rehearsal spot before everyone else got there, and we were just doing an acoustic jam, and we were doing some Judas Priest, and it was just amazing. If you know Judas Priest, it's just amazing listening to this guy sing. And the drummer was a good drummer. He had some talent. Okay, good. I got to be careful using that term, but he had talent. Now, he was a big guy. He was probably 6'5". I don't know. And he must have been 300 pounds. And he hit really hard. But anyway, I enjoyed playing with them. Okay, those other little things aside, but I played 2 gigs with them. First gig, I provided all the PA and lighting, and they just, normally the guy that does that always takes $200 or $300 off the top with a gig. I was just trying to be nice, saying, hey, let's just, this is kind of my gift to help get things going, and kind of assuming people would be appreciative of it. We had all really worked to promote the gig. The gig was packed. The band got paid very well. But during the gig, I noticed the singer got more and more drunk with his singing, and it wasn't quite the same as the night went on. And the drummer, he got drunk too, and he went into this 50-minute solo, like he was John Bonham. It's like, cool, man. If you want to do like a 5-minute drum solo while we take a break, that's cool. But the point I'm getting to is they didn't tell me that they had a parking, and at the end of the night, they all just took off, So I was there for 3 hours wrapping cables, packing up all the PA and lighting equipment. Like everyone just took off. That's not cool. You kind of help. In my crazy head, I thought, well, I'm providing all this for free. You don't have to rent it. You don't have to pay for it. Like, there should be some appreciation. I wasn't feeling that. I got a call from the drummer the night. I said, hey, man, I just wanted to apologize. I got really drunk and I'm not going to do that again. I'm like, okay, cool, man. Whatever. A number of weeks later, we had another local gig in town. It was packed. Again, I provided the PA and the sound system. And again, it was the same thing. Like, I have never seen human beings drink like these guys, but the singer, as the night went on, he got more and more drunk. And the drummer, he would drink. I don't know if they got these cans for him and he'd crushed them while he was playing. He must have had about 40 pounds of empty beer cans around him. And at the end of the night, he went into this crazy 50-minute long solo. And it's like, okay, at the end of the night, those same thing, they just took off. They didn't help. And I thought, again, this goes back to that. When you have something good, nurture it. Human nature isn't like that. If you're in a relationship and you're with someone good, like, be attentive to what they need. Listen to them when they try to communicate with you. What are their needs? What do people? It's weird. It's just human nature. I'm a lot of things, but I always tried to think that I was a thoughtful, considerate, kind human being. I'm sure if you went back and talked to these guys, they might say, well, Brian was very intense and but it's like, okay. But anyway, that band tried to carry on, but they kind of died a disastrous death. The one other personality type too. I don't mean to be jaded here, guys. I'm just kind of caffeined up talking. Sometimes you get in bands with people that just aren't good people. I remember I briefly played in a band, and the guy that approached me, I'd heard a lot of bad things. Anytime I went against my gut feeling in my life, guys, I always paid for it dearly. He wasn't a good person, but he lived close, and I always had to drive a lot to rehearsals and band stuff where I lived. And I got into a band with this guy, and I realized after a few months why he's not liked. And some people just aren't good people. They rip people off. They're underhanded. They have their hand out all the time. So there's a lot of different personalities in bands, even at the highest professional level. Like some people just don't get along, whatever. I break it down to personalities, keeping agreements, not being an a-hole. Anytime I was, and I got better as I got older. I said, okay, so I'm in a band here. I'm playing with this type of personality. My last professional band, aside from me, there were two type A personalities. Sometimes two type A personalities, they tend to butt heads. I knew I was working with type A personalities. They ran the band. I'm like, okay, cool. I did what they asked, and I didn't let my type A come out into the band because I was basically a hired gun. And it was like, okay, cool. I did what was asked of me or whatever. They were professional. There was, I think, 2 even keels in that band too, which also helped make it work. But you could almost, look at these different personality types and say, okay, well, this could work with this, but this is going to be trouble. But I learned how to sum things up really quickly. One of the things when you're a musician, it's in your blood. And even though it could go dormant for a number of years, and it's like we're talking about viruses here, right? Or something. I hate to admit it, but I'm feeling the urge a little bit to get out and play with some people. I don't want to. I don't want to deal with other personalities. And I'm also at a point now too, I'm not really looking at things from a business perspective, just doing it for fun. But my full-time gig is I give guitar lessons and music theory lessons. Like when I play in a band, I don't want to also have to be giving guitar lessons. That's supposed to be my thing. And I've been in those situations and I get out of them really quickly. So, but anyway, any questions? Well, Strawberry, I have a lot of, Solitary Adventure and I, we've had a lot of conversations about Prince on the record and off the record. And I'm always fascinated by those dynamics that we just talked about. But this is something that I wanted to talk about. I filmed some video of me trying to discuss this last week, and it just kind of fell apart. It was not cohesive and not YouTube worthy. And I thought, well, let's just try it live off the cuff. So volume one of why bands don't get along, or why most bands fail, it's due to personalities. In the beginning, it's like a relationship. In the beginning, it's all fun and exciting, but once things get going, is everyone going to be able to get along? Are people just a-holes, or do people just not appreciate anything? Do people just not listen or care? And I hate to, say that, but showing a little bit of appreciation and gratitude can go a long way. When you're not getting that and you're footing a lot of the work and trying to help and get things going, that eventually you get that resentment in your stomach. It's like if you're in a relationship and you start getting that seed of resentment here in your stomach. Once that resentment sets in, it's hard to get rid of it. So, a man named Briggs. In theory, that's good. When you're on a certain level, though, it's hard to do that because eventually, I just don't want to be in a situation where I'm instructing and having to coach people. Um, it, how do I word this and be really nice about it? When your whole life's been music, right? So let's say my next door neighbor plays 3 chords and he plays Johnny Cash. If I go next door to jam with him, what do you think is going to happen? It'll be me giving free guitar lessons. You know what I mean? So in theory, it sounds good. Ironically, I live in a very kind of remote part of Quebec, very, very small town, lots of wilderness, the way we like it. My next door neighbor has he's got like his master's in music and he has an amazing recording studio. We're not into the same types of music, but he's been a friend and someone I talked to. Endless Rage, Mark, my man. Let me know about that Vimeo. Oh no, don't. I learned something about the settings in Vimeo for my Patreons there, and I know what is wrong, and I just got to get in and fix it. So I think I know the solution to that. So a man named Briggs, my man, miss you, buddy. It'd be nice to get some group chats going. Maybe tomorrow. Got to talk to Solitary Venture, see what he's doing, and go from there. But that's the problem. I have a friend. I lived in when I was kind of out of music, I lived in a border city between Canada and the United States called Cornwall, Ontario. It's where Ryan Gosling's from. I'm going to say the town's about 50,000 people. I was in a different industry, but a guy I knew from that industry, he was a musician. He was a wicked guitar player. Matt, do you watch my videos, Matt? Giving you a shout out, buddy. He's wicked, but he almost kind of put himself out of the scene because he's on such a crazy level. It's hard to, I can't word it right, but it's like what I'm saying. It's just hard to find compatible musicians. And I think I had been in a few band situations too where maybe there was an intimidation factor with my playing. I hate to say that, but and when you're really good at something, another thing I had to deal with too was a lot of jealousy. And I don't want to get into that today, but I was in bands where people would come up to the band and say, "Man, you got a smoking guitar player," and it really bothered them. And I had to be aware of that, so I had to kind of tone down my playing, and it wasn't right. It just held the band back. It held a lot of things back. So you got to deal with a lot of different stuff out there, man, that a lot of people don't realize. But yeah, I'm kind of casually kind of looking for something, but I would never just go all full in again, be naive. I'd be like, okay, like let's try a jam or something. So I'm not a Fahrenheit guy. We'd have to talk about, I'm a Celsius guy, but I know it's hot here, so I couldn't imagine how hot it is in Phoenix. But anyway, guys, I know that was a long bit of verbiage there for me, but hopefully we get some Patreon group chat going tomorrow. I love talking with everyone. This was more of like a class type thing. But this is volume one of why a lot of bands fail. It's personalities, and in the beginning, people putting their best foot forward as people do, whether it's dating, bands, whatever. But very quickly, when things get comfortable, you kind of see how things are going. So all you musicians out there, and my friend who I was talking to about the Vitalism video, hey, you know what? Probably this kind of stuff happened in that band too, to some extent or another. So, but anyway, She said, have to hibernate. That is why, volume 1. Right there. So now let's do a little chat here. McBeardy Land, my man from Omaha. When I think of Omaha, I think of Houston Alexander. Do you remember him, UFC fighter? He was from Omaha. $36. But I think in Phoenix, there's not a lot of humidity. Right up here, there's a ton of humidity. Ugh. A man named Briggs. Well, we miss you, and I'm hoping that tomorrow we can get a Zoom Patreon group chat going. It is my dream to go to Phoenix or New Mexico, but I'm going to wrap this one up here, guys, and I'm just going to go back to Patreon and do some stuff. I got some settings to change on Vimeo so everyone can see the videos because we had some problems with that. So I want to get that fixed. But that, and my friends, is volume 1 of why most bands fail. For all you musicians out there, I hope this helps you out. Remember, practice hard, but practice smart. We'll see you soon.